Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's good to be back on the data talks. So it's been a month that we connected. So thanks for joining today's session on new normal in digital and analytics in supply chain post COVID. And as you're all aware, the disruptions caused by COVID pandemic and have left deep impacts on every industry, including changing the landscapes in consumer behavior and their preferences, and forcing every business to think in unique and different ways to sustain during and the post-virus outbreak. So today we will be discussing how the supply chain industry is adopting new ways of doing business using digital solutions and analytics during during the COVID and post-COVID days as well. And we have Dr. Ganesh to deliver today's agenda of the session. And Dr. Ganesh is working as a senior knowledge expert at McKinsey and Company in Chennai location. And he is a global lead for manufacturing and supply chain management for Center of Competencies. And he has graduated in mechanical and production engineering from Annamalai University with the university first rank. And he has pursued his master's degree in industrial engineering at National Institute of Technology, Tiruchinappalli, and he secured college first as well. He has then moved to Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, where he obtained his doctoral degree in logistics and supply chain management. And he has is having total 15 years of research and consulting experience in supply chain consulting domain and worked with the top consulting firms such as TCS and IBM. He has published more than 150 plus papers in leading international research and 10 plus papers in leading national journals. He has presented and published more than 50 plus papers in reputed international conferences and 10 plus research articles in national conferences. He has written 10 plus books, a chapter in 7 other books. And he is the editor-in-chief for 3 international journals, and he in the editorial board for various international journals. Ganesh is expertise in strategic networking, network design and optimization, production planning optimization, inventory optimization, demand forecasting, product flow optimization, production scheduling, and transportation optimization. Among his other interests are music, counseling, website designing, interior design, decoration, and photography. He himself lyricist and has written several poems in both English and Tamil. So, Dr. Ganesh, we hope we get to see your poems somewhere in social media if you have posted. Please do share the links with us. So, Dr. Ganesh, I welcome you today's session. Thank you so much for agreeing to take the session for us. And please take over the session.
Thanks, Giri. Thanks a lot. Hope I'm audible. My voice is clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Very good. Very good morning. Greetings, everyone. Very glad to be connected to the larger group of people, like almost 134. The number is increasing. Great. I think great to be connected on the Saturday morning. So hope everyone is safe and healthy. So please be safe. I know the pandemic actually is spreading, and please be safe and healthy. Let's pray God actually soon we come out of this. So very good. I think with this, thanks to ISB and thanks to the team for this great opportunity to kind of discuss about what is a new normal in supply chain, especially focusing the digital analytics. I'm actually going to talk about even beyond digital and analytics. That's why I actually put a topic as new normal in supply chain post-COVID. The digital analytics is part of the supply chain, right? So obviously that is there as well in the discussion. So thanks. That's a great opportunity, and then we'll go forward for the next 55 minutes discussions. And we actually have a Q&A session as well. So start post your questions, and I think Mr. Giri is going to collate, and I'll probably answer those while we actually start discussing. Good. With this, I'm actually going to focus the next 50 minutes in terms of 3 different sections. Okay, one is like especially how the impact of economy, right? That is the first one. Impact of COVID on economy. McKinsey has done a global survey, even India-based survey. So what is coming along? What are the sentiments there in the consumer? What is happening in the different industry. So let us understand that. Then what is the new normal in business? What is the McKinsey suggestion in terms of the new normal? What is the framework many companies are actually trying to adopt? And what are the shifts which is happening in the overall supply chain, including digital analytics? So that is a three section I'm planning to cover today, right? So let me start with impact. So when I start with the impact, let me ask a question, right? So COVID, I know COVID actually is from Feb and March and stuff, right? Can you guess what was the other geopolitical tensions was there in the last 1 year? Because the last 1 year completely was shaken up the global business. I have a guess. Many of you know what are the different geopolitical tension in the overall supply chain. I could actually see a lot of chat, right? So the last 1 year, this has been actually lot of issues in terms of the global business, right? So US-China trade war, South China seas tension. Yeah, fantastic. I think many of you are actually correctly guessing it. So last 1 year has been a very, very tough situation. Okay. So there are increasing pressure in the margin, right? Especially for auto OEMs and the allied industries, right? So let's actually see what is that. So COVID kind of accelerating the need for the important element called business continuity plan. We call it as a BCP. But nevertheless, any business has to think about the business continuity plan. That is very important because last 1 year has been a very, very tough situation. Let us understand. One element which I could not see in the chat is trade wars. Okay. Very good. Very good. I think you all guessed it very good. It's all known very well. So the Brexit, US-China trade war, right? And what you see in the first column, yeah, there's been actually a very tough situation for the global business. You could see actually a lot of shifts happening, right? Almost the implications for the OEMs. There is a huge increase in the lead time, and there is a great trade loss for the UK in terms of the Brexit, right? And a lot of companies has gone for a partial shutdown as well. US-China trade war, I think it's actually good for a few countries. For a few countries, exports to US has increased, but I think for many countries, has been a tough situation. So that has been there, right? Is my voice clear? Somebody was indicating what.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Very good. So that is the Giri. I think any point of time if the voice goes breaking, you let me know. Yeah.
Sure.
So that is the last 1 year being a very tough situation, right? So that I think put a lot of business under the margin pressure. If you see the example of automotive company, the operating margin of the auto, like almost a percentage point of 1.5, which is decreased. The automobile sales, actually everyone know there's been a very tough situation. So that's actually all evident. So what you see in the last column, there is a stronger BCP, which is called business continuity plan, which is very important. Many companies, for example, I'll give an auto as an example, right? So many companies actually realize that this is very important. So Toyota to all production at 7 plants in Japan. Same in terms of electronics company like HP, Dell, and Microsoft, right? So there's all actually very, very clear examples where a lot of issues, many companies are actually realize that they need a risk and resilient supply chain. The BCP is very important, which is the continuity plan of the business is very important. So that's been actually a challenge. Okay. And this has led companies to kind of rethink, hey, the way I do today will not be enough. I need to reimagine, I have to rethink, and I have to kind of shift the operations in the business. That's how the companies started thinking about it, right? So let's see what is that, right? So companies started rethinking. Fantastic. I think this is the survey, what you see in the column 1. A lot of executives wanted to kind of redesign and restructure their entire supply chain. I think 1 or 2 examples, probably read it, you will understand, right? Almost 70-75% of the senior executives, they kind of planning to shift the entire supply chain out of China. So that's been happening. That's very evident. And also the EU company is planning to shift sourcing to other Asian countries. There are a lot of doors open, right? So that's been rethinking their entire network, the network structure, the business acquisitions, mergers, everything has been actually started. People started rethinking, right? So, given all this, a lot of moves already happening. You would have actually seen in the last 6 8 months. So, a lot of moves already happening. These are some of the snippets from the different magazines, right? China's scramble to stem manufacturing. GoPro is moving camera production out of China, citing tariff worries, right? So these are some of the real snippets from the different magazines. And also there is a FDI shifts, right? So which is like a 2x in FDI pipeline for India. So likewise, you see a lot of inflow outflow shift in the FDI. Okay, so this is happening a lot. This is happening actually in the last 1 year. So on top of this, all this geopolitical tensions, the COVID actually came and sat, right? That's been a very tough situation, and it's a worsening situation for many business. So the question to all of you is, let's understand. What do you think about the general perceptions about this current economic situation because of the COVID? If this question is come on the table, let us probably understand, right? What would be what are the general perceptions? Yeah, I think I could actually see very bad. Yeah. So the worsening situation is actually it's very bad. Honestly, the perception about the current economic situation is kind of worsening around the world. That is true. I'm going to show the real pictures. But there is a room for a positive sentiment. Let's see that. That's the point, right? There is a whether is there a room for a positive? Let's see that. But I think let me actually first of all show you what is the overall economic situation as a country wise, and what is the shift happening in the last 3 quarters, like almost like December, March, and June. June. I mean, a lot of things happened in July and August, but the survey actually is till end of June. Probably you'll see this in the next slide. What you see here is you see two charts, right? The left hand side, the overall economic conditions in the respective countries. So what you see, I think China is out of the outside of the situation, the bad situation. They are better, but in terms of the Asia Pacific, India, Europe, what you see in the left hand side, it's really a worsening situation, right? So India being look at in terms of the portion of the blue, the light blue is actually only 8 and 3, which is like very tricky, and this is happening for multiple other countries as well, right? And when you look at the right hand side, how this evolving in the last maybe 2-3 quarters from the December to June. I think it's actually like look at in terms of the global economy. Yeah. So there is if you look at in terms of the 5 different category, one is like substantially better versus substantially worse, which is like the black condition, right? So that actually is getting worse, right? What you see here is almost like 58. What do you say, like, of the respondent indicating that substantially is getting worse. So I think this perception is there, and this is actually happening in the last 1 or 2 months. There are a lot of shifts also happening. So let us understand: is there any room for a positive sentiments? Okay. If you ask me, if any room for positive sentiments, I think the survey actually gives the answer. You see the survey, which is especially from the 2 aspects. One is from the demand aspect, other is from the profit aspect. Okay. It is very good to see. It's very good to see. Yes, there are some positive sentiments about the future. So that is actually on the rise. Many reasons. I'll tell you what are the reasons and what are the ways people are actually going to kind of gain this positive sentiments. What you see here is 2 different charts: the overall demand as well the profit. If you look at this trend is actually very great, right? In terms of the between the 4 different option, don't know to the decrease. Sorry, don't know to the decrease, right? At least people actually say there is a increase in customer demand. So that's happening in the last the last around June, July. That is actually great, right? So it was like earlier 39, now it's in a good positive increase, right? So which is like 42. And I know the decrease is there still in terms of the demand, but I think it's not going down, right? It's not a downward trend. In terms of profit, there is a dip around April, but I think it actually gaining the curve now, right? So there is a positive sentiment, so that is very good to know. That is very glad to know. And the level of optimism vary with respect to countries. It is not same for all the countries. Let us see how the level of optimism is there, right? The level of optimism, if you look at this particular chart, it's a very nice chart. US as a overall country is more optimistic than the European countries, but less so than India or China, right? So India is feeling more positive. So that's actually a very good sign. What you see here is optimistic, unsure, and pessimistic. So the three different confidence level. I think salute. So India's kind of actually getting a picture of optimism actually is coming along well, right? So that is very glad and good to know. The other countries, the optimism actually is very low in around June, July. So that vary. This actually vary. This actually kind of differ. So let us understand the overall GDP scenario, the India GDP scenario, how that look like, right? So is there any luck in the GDP scenario? When there is there are multiple scenarios, by the way, right? So McKinsey, if you read the McKinsey articles, there are 9 different scenarios has been plotted, right? How the advent of the COVID, which is going to happen, versus the interventions, right? So based on that, if actually the companies are actually stepping back and rethinking about their strategy, it's not about digital analytics, it's about strategy first of all. How the strategy, how the operations, and how they bring the element of digital analytics on the table. Based on that, the GDP scenario will vary. But I'm going to show you a couple of scenarios. This is again around June, July. The India GDP scenario, the 2 different scenario, right? Which is call it as a A3 and red scenario. We call it as there's 9 different scenario, but I'm not talking about all the 9 scenarios. But it's very confounding scenarios. But actually, these 2 scenario, kind of a promising. If the lockdown continues and progressive relaxation happens, when companies are restarting the supply chain, there is like a A3 scenario. That means people are normalizing production. People are getting into a low-cost semi-automation. If they kind of able to stabilize the partners, which is like the supplier and third-party logistics, all this actually coming along, then I think there's a A3 as a scenario. And the lockdown, scenario 3 is red scenario, which is actually worse, right? Likewise, there are multiple scenarios, friends, right? At least this 2 scenario indicates around FY21, Q2, Q3, we probably can see a very good steep increase, which actually eventually evolve. That's a very promising scenario, which is like a A3. If everything goes well. Right, it depends upon the pandemic, the effect as well. But this is like at least couple of scenario which evidently can go well on the table. If not Q2, Q3, it actually goes well in Q4, right? So in the next 3-4 quarters, probably we'll see the situation come along. So that's how the scenario, indicates as of now. I think it depends upon the multiple other reasons. The scenario can vary. So given all this, what is the growth percentage, especially in the consumer today, right? And people are actually moving into the online, right? Let us understand how this growth percentage of the consumer purchasing online. So that let's actually see. Any guess, 2%, 3% increase, or 5% increase, or 30% increase? Probably you can actually do a guess. How much actually would have got increased in the last 3-4 months? I probably could see some chat as well. 40, 80, 50. Globally, it is like 40, 45, sir. Okay. Friends, I think globally it's like a range between 35 to 45. Probably if I have to show the India condition, it's 15 to 20%. The online purchase has increased. for a different category. What you see is a different category, starting from a grocery till the books and magazine newspaper. I think, but I see people also purchase online pre-COVID as well. The growth in the consumer buying online, that I think 20% actually has kind of increased and expected to increase more as well. That's great. And few category has increased a lot, right? You could see the few category which is coming in the 39% as well. So that is like, that is like a very good sign, which is it is great. And some actually goes in 72% as well. So there are few the few area there is alcohol 72%. There are few area which is actually increasing heavily, few actually in the range of 10, 15, 20%. So most people expect to make the portion. And there is a next slide. There is a good matrix, right? The matrix shows you in terms of the in-store versus the online. That's a very good matrix. You see different product category. Tobacco remaining in store, but I think if you see the especially the skin care, makeup, discretionary, the household essentials, there are three categories, right? So the household essentials, which is actually moved into the online setup. I think these are the overall category which is actually moving in a good shape, right? How much consumer do you think? How much percentage of consumer do you think would have actually started a new shopping behavior, right? New shopping behavior. The question is this: how much percentage of consumer in India they tried new shopping behavior? Tried at least, right? I just want to have some guesstimate. 20%, 40%, 60, 70, whatever the number, right? 70, 60, 70, 40, 40. Yeah, this is very surprising. I think after the survey, I think I also got surprised. Almost 91% of the consumer have tried a new shopping behavior. And shopping behavior varies. I completely understand. But I think it's a new shopping behavior. Be it a different retailer, different store, be it a different brand, there's also a shopping behavior. New digital shopping method, or it may be a new shopping method, or a private label. I don't bother about the brand. Store brand is fine. So I think this is what all evolving in terms of shopping behavior, right? This is the overall impact on the economy. The last slide which I'm going to cover is whether all the sector are being impacted. If you ask me the question, no, not all the sector. The next slide is a very, very complicated slide. Probably, I think I'll try to explain the slide. Okay, what you see here is all sector are being impacted. That's for sure. But what you see here is you see from a tourism till the pharma, the impact to the consumer and pharma is actually very less. And probably I would say the demand disruption is very, very low. There is nothing much happened. Rather, I think the few industry are growing, right? Like a packaging or chemical industry. I've seen kind of a little growth in a particular segments. Pharma actually I've seen a growth in particular segment as well, right? So the demand disruption definitely is very, very high in terms of tourism, aviation, automotive, yes, but very, very low in terms of the moderate and low in terms of certain industry like a consumer electronics as well, pharma, right? So that is a demand disruption. And because of, the reason, right? The travel restrictions and the imports and exports, a lot of variations, especially, those are the main logistics reasons, right? And if you look at what is the disruption from the supply and logistics, that actually, high in terms of energy, in terms of logistics industry, yes, but moderate in terms of pharma and other industry. This is also because the reason behind this is also the footprint, right? Some are global, some are local. There is a regional, right? Especially pharma is kind of a global, whereas the chemical is like a very regional because of the product category, right? So that is like a footprint section. And depth of supply chain is also sometimes very low versus high. Depends upon the industry as well. And overall, the inventory impact is also between low to high, especially like pharma is like very high, and whereas the consumer electronics is very short in terms of the life cycle. So these are the preliminary views how the industry is actually getting affected and how the sector is getting affected. These are preliminary views. So given all this, This is all the impact. Very good. So we are actually very clear on the impact. Now let us understand what is the new normal. Okay. In the new normal, before I go to the new normal, any business, I just want to get a sense of the audience. Right? So any business, what would be the very important objectives in supply chain? The three important objectives. There's always a three triangle, the mantra of the business. So what do you call? Hey, this is my three a CEO level business. Somebody is saying profitability, resilience, reduce lead time. Very good, very good. So let me step back, right? If I'm actually a CEO and I'm a managing director, what I actually would look at in terms of profit, right? I think people are really indicating, and somebody is indicating the cash cost and service. I think you correctly said, right? I just want to correct the cost in a different way. It's a cash, profit, and service, right? I mean, cost is obviously I'll do all initiatives, interventions to kind of reduce my cost and bring my profit margin well on the table. So that is a triangle. That is a triangle. How do I reduce my cost to bring the high profit margin? That is one element. How do I, have the right level of inventory, the right level of working capital so that I can bring the better working, the working capital. So I have a high cash flow. And the third is how do I bring the delight service to the customers? Okay. So this is the viewpoint in terms of the business objective, right? So the pre-COVID, the service has been a very predominant. We want to serve customers. We want to kind of bring the best on the customers. So very competing situations. We want to be very clear on the objective, which is a priority objective is a service. And obviously, I want to reduce my costs and bring the profit margin as a second objective. And third would be working capital. I probably do a trade-off in terms of working capital. Post-COVID, there is a shift in the focus. And give a guess. What is the shift in the focus? Which would have actually got one and which would have got three, right? I mean, you can give a guess of it. But I think what you have seen when I'm talking to multiple CEOs, multiple companies, what they are actually indicating is currently the sustainability of somebody actually mentioned about profit 1, service 3. Fantastic. You said it, right? So that is the post-COVID situation. So I probably, margin is important. I kind of get into a high profit margin, try and figure out, and not actually have a high cash flow. Look at actually in terms of not a huge inventory, have high cash flow. Then I think look at in terms of I delight segmented service. I think that's why you would have seen some of the white papers come from the McKinsey from a just-in-time to a just-in-case. I think people are focusing there very much. In terms of the service, I probably now step back and do a segmentation. A very low volume, high volatile, very intermittent orders, which is having a low margin. Sorry. So we may not be in a position to serve. Or we may serve as a make to order. Or we may serve as a with a longer lead time. The order fulfill lead time might be a little longer. So that's where the service shift, which has happened in terms of, very well post-COVID, especially which has been addressed through a segmentation. So it's an idealized service for sure based on the segmentation. So that's a focus which is happening. So McKinsey come with a very good framework, the 5R framework, the 5R. I don't know, somebody would have seen some white papers or maybe some other documents. There's a 5R. McKinsey is kind of suggesting the company has to look at in terms of the five-stage journey, right? The journey is very important. Post-COVID, this is kind of the new normal or next normal for any company. From a supply chain perspective, any company comes on the table, they need to think about this 5R. Number one, first of all, don't think that you have to you have to kind of bring your business back and then bring everything back on the table. No. First of all, solve the basic problems. Your problem belongs to employees, customers, your partners, which is suppliers and 3PL. Solve that first, and that is important. Then probably you try to understand your flexibility, the flexibility of your manpower, flexibility of your production. Can I bring a very quick, low-cost semi-automation? So try to think about the flexibility. The third element is fine. Where, which location, which area I'm going to serve. That is the third portion. And the fourth portion is how do I actually, shift my thinking differently. And the last is now I bring an innovative way of doing the business. So that is the 5R, which is called resolve, resilience, return, reimagine, and reform. Resolve. Determine the scale in which you want to operate, the pace in which you want to operate, and the depth of action you required. So first of all, protect your own employees, business partners, which is a supplier, your third-party logistics service provider, and try to maintain the continuity of the business. Have a BCP on the table. Resolve the problem. Then think about resilience. That means try and figure out how you can actually be flexible. The production flexibility, which is very important, right? The logistics flexibility, supply flexibility. So try to create a strong foundation. How I'm going to actually make it a flexible supply. So that is very important. Then the third element is return, slowly return. Where I can do a semi-automation, where I can do a low-cost automation, where I can think in terms of digital element. Digital need not become in the entire value chain. We can think in terms of only specific area, right? And then reimagine. The same old way of doing business may not work out. You have to reimagine the business. Very, very vital. Then reform yourself. The reformation is deeper collaboration, different channels. That's where the omni-channel is evolving heavily, right? Different channels. How do we shift in the competitive environment through a different capacity, right? Different acquisition mergers. So these are the 5R journey, which is actually as a stage gate people actually has to follow. So given this 5R journey, how the India is thinking now, how the companies in India grappling with these 5 questions about their supply chain. Let's probably understand that in the next slide. If you look at from the India point of view, right? Resolve is almost well prepared. Okay, I think glad to know that in the resolve part we are well prepared, but in the reimagination of business, the different way of doing the business and the reformation, there is like innovation and creativity, right? That part India has to think through differently. What structural changes I can actually bring on the table to make my supply chain more resilient? What are the key learnings I can actually bring it from a different country? That's why I can do a reimagination of my business. Reimagination in terms of each and every area. So that these 2 areas, which actually like we need to kind of think through. But these are the questions, right? What is the current situation? Every company is thinking about this. What should I do in terms of immediately to protect my manufacturing and supply chain operations? And what are the current outlook in the next? How do I kind of be resilient? What is the way in which I can actually bring the demand on the table? Be resilient. So those 5 areas actually is this is a stage in India. We are well prepared in the first 1 or 2 stages, but slowly we have to evolve in the last 2 stages. So that is the status in terms of India. What do we learn from consumer survey? So earlier I said there are positive sentiments, and we did a consumer survey as well. What is the learning from consumer survey from India point of view, right? So let's probably understand few elements. What was the learning from consumer survey? There are 5 things which is coming evident on the table. Number 1, there is a shift to the value. In terms of vital, essential, desirable, people are moving from a desirable to essentials, right? So it is about, I probably can go only for a vital and essential product, not about the desirable product. So that means almost like greater than 50% believe it will take 6 months for the economy to recover. Everyone actually believe that. That's great. And the crisis will continue definitely to kind of another 4 or 5 months. So spending on essential is very important. So consumer actually, the shift on spending has changed. So shift to the value, shift to the essential. That is one important element. Second, people are thinking about, can I move to a omni-channel? Right? That is very important, from a multi-channel to omni-channel. And the third element, loyalty. The brand loyalty. So there is a shock to the loyalty. We can't expect the same level of loyalty anymore. And the fourth element is hygiene, which is a very health and caring economy, right? Hygiene, health and caring economy. So that is like a fourth. And the last one is the home body economy, right? These are the 5 changes which is happening, guys. Shift in values, and then the flight to the digital and omni-channel setup, shock to the loyalty, very, very tough. Hygiene-oriented economy, health-oriented economy, and then home body, especially the most of the consumer actually are waiting for the milestones beyond lifting restrictions, right? So to return to normal out of home activities, right? So this is what happening in the consumer, from the consumer survey. This is like a, the key learnings. Because of this, what is the impact in supply chain? If you look at impact in supply chain because of all this, there are 8 important areas probably we have to look at. How the companies are seeing because of this consumer behavior, what are the different element they need to focus. Number 1, the companies have to focus restructuring of their entire network. Or today, the number of DCs, number of warehouses what I have, the number of the channel partners what I have, that I need to kind of redesign, restructure heavily, right? So because almost like 70% of the people face issues in production, in the distribution footprint, that is very important. So I need to bring the redesign and restructuring of a network. So the analytics towards network design is evolving, very important, right? So because network design is it's a very complex optimization problem. For the people who knows operation research, it's an NP-art problem, non-deterministic polynomial art problem, right? So it's very, what is, are we not doing pre-COVID network design? Yeah, yes, but imagine post-COVID in the last 4 months, the focus in network design, restructuring network design has drastically increased. Maybe 8 out of 10 companies actually wanted to redesign their entire network. So analytics focus in network design has increased. Second is the element of virtual office, that has also increased. Third element is the element of merger and acquisition, especially how we can think the acquisition differently, the contracting acquisition differently, the merger and acquisition differently. So that is a third focus which is happening, which is very vital. And the fourth element is the relationship management. That is the same, that is there on the table even pre-COVID. But now the supplier relationship versus the contractors, which is like a third-party logistics and overheads, right? So that relationship management actually also drastically evolving and changing. And there is a huge impact in the direct cost, the labor material, right? And how do we manage the direct cost effectively? What are the analytics required? What are the machine learning we can bring on the table to kind of manage the direct cost in terms of thinking about, oh, these are the areas I can actually optimize my material. These are the areas in which I can redesign my product development. So that actually happening very well, right? And there is shift in the talent and the talent house. There is shift in the talent and also shift in the semi-automation, the low-cost semi-automation. These are the some of the shift which actually company are seeing impact. So as I mentioned about the first element, which is network design. So that is very vital. That is happening, right? And the virtual office management, because you clearly see that, right? In terms of the 40% of the leaders believe more than half of their operations will be virtual. So the augmented reality, virtual reality is going to come on the table. That is for sure, right? And also the mergers and acquisition, right? So that is very, very important, right? And the overall SRM and the CRM, that is also very, very critical. That is evolving large. And the focus on direct cost management, very, very vital. And there is a shift in the low cost, especially like, the semi-automation, the low cost semi-automation is also getting shift. And also the increase in digital and advanced analytics, that I think in terms of talent, the shift in recruitment, that is happening. So these are some of the shift which is happening very well, right? So this is the new normal which is happening in the business. So given this new normal, the next 15 minutes, probably I can explain about what are the shifts happening in the entire supply chain. So let me ask a question in the shift, right? So the question is, what would be the most challenging function in supply chain post-COVID? If you ask me in terms of the, the most challenging function, so there are multiple functions, right? The demand planning as a function, the production planning as a function. It can be like logistics planning as a function, and be it the entire value chain of supply chain. If you take order and demand management, service level management as a function, production facility, production management, production scheduling, supply management. So if you look at what would be the most challenging function, I probably see some of the area, right? Logistics and service, forecasting, demand forecasting, Very well said. Demand planning and forecasting is very vital. Okay, because I need to kind of step back and think through how do I bring the demand, which is very vital, right? So how do you do a forecasting? Is it the same way of forecasting which I do in the past? Is it going to be the same, or I have to do a different one? So that is very important, right? So having said all this, demand planning and forecasting is very vital, very good. Now let us see how the business leaders, how they cite the multiple sources of supply chain vulnerability, right? The next slide, what do you actually explain? What shows this? This is a very important slide. Let me explain this slide very clearly, right? What you see here is these two elements, which is a demand variability as well the difficulty of the forecasting accurately. So these two are the important issues on the table. The business leader anyway cite multiple sources of supply chain vulnerability, but these two are very vital, very important, right? So, but if you look at in terms of the few areas, the demand variability and the sole sourcing, which is a non-sustainable input, that is a second area. Then the long input lead time and the low or just-in-time inventory, lack of visibility in the supplier risk, and these are some of the areas, right? So these are the multiple sources, and these are the different conditions currently makes every company most vulnerable to value chain disruptions, right? And so now, you see actually a shift in the different industry: auto, chemical, consumer, and pharma. You see some industry actually have a huge impact, but I think if you see, coincidentally, almost all the industry actually having a greater impact in terms of demand forecasting, right? So that is the important area which is evolving. So having said this, there are multiple sources, multiple areas to focus, but what are the different contours? Let us probably understand in terms of the strategy, what company can think, how company can actually think in terms of different strategy. So I'll probably lay down some of the strategies in the next slide, right? So do you think the company can actually there's a question, right? Would do the dual source? This is one strategy. So likewise, there are multiple strategies evolving today. Yes, if you ask me, dual source, many companies are thinking about this because entire supplier channel, supplier management is very critical. So company has to rethink about their entire operating strategy. So what are the different strategies evolving because of this, the supply chain vulnerables, right? Number one, people are now shifting, especially in terms of dual sourcing of raw material. I can actually think about multi-sourcing of supplier, dual sourcing of supplier, very important. How do I step back and rethink where the inventory can be increased, right? So I need to increase inventory for a critical product. It is not about following the inventory norms and optimization to kind of run the business. It is about try and figure out very high margin product, very high volume product, very low volatile. The volatility variability is very low, and the product is also non-intermittent. That means it actually sell every week. It is like non-intermittent product, and it is also from a competitiveness point of view, it is like it's in the in the top competition product. So those product, can I step back, segment those product, figure out what would be the additional safety stock or additional cycle stock I should actually carry. That is our additional inventory which people are thinking about certain product element. And nearshoring and expanding supplier base, that is also happening. Rationalizing supply chain, that's why I mentioned, right? The network design, that is another strategy people are actually thinking in terms of making the resilience of the supply chain. And can we step back and reduce my number of products? That's where the advanced analytics, the text retrieval, two different SKU, almost similar, almost same. Can I actually standardize them? Can I rationalize them? Can I reduce my portfolio complexity so my production will not actually get complicated? So how do I reduce my entire SKU complexity is another element. So I'll tell you, one of the CPG companies stopped producing certain variants, right? And one of the pharma companies stopped producing certain basic products, not required. We may not see that the requirement today. So the shift is happening in terms of product portfolio itself. And a lot of auto OEM companies step back and thinking, what is the right product portfolio should have it. That's happening a lot. And also, how do we do a backup production site in terms of contract manufacturing, the new contractors? How do we think about that? So that's what is happening in terms of the strategy. So what are the different contours happening in the business? There are 5 contours happening in the business. Let us understand those contours. Okay, the contours are the next normal contours are 5. Number 1, evolving the go-to market, very, very vital. And companies should step back and think about how to reset the cost. All the indirect cost, can we actually step back and reset? Use advanced analytics, use the machine learning, and figure out how do we kind of think about the cost resetting. Digitalization at the core. And the 4th element, how do I move from a just-in-time to a just-in-case? I mentioned earlier, it's about a segmented service, right? And make in India, right? So these are the 5 contours which is evolving. Probably, I know I have like 13 more minutes. I'll probably extend my 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes for my Q&A, but another 10 minutes I'll cover these 5, each actually probably 1 minute. So I'll cover the next 5-6 minutes, right? Let us understand what is evolving go-to-market. It's very interesting to see. In evolving go-to-market, the omni-channel is evolving great. Okay, what you see in this slide is very, very evident, right? Which is happening today in terms of the multi-channel and omni-channel setup, right? So let me actually explain this in detail. Many players are kind of exploring new partners. So what do you see? The 3 different columns. A lot of CPG firms, they are actually moving from a traditional route to a the next level of supply and distribution through the hyper-local solution. For example, ITC with the Domino's Pizza, it's a hyper-local solution, and Tata Consumer Products with the Flipkart. It's a horizontal e-commerce players, and there is a direct connect, which is actually a Coke with the in-store. So that is one shift happening, and there are offline player. They are actually now trying to move into omni-channel solutions. So that is also evolving a lot, especially the Big Bazaar with the Uber, Vishal Retail with the Zomato, right? These are some of the hyper-local delivery tie-ups, which is like moving into a omni-channel solution from a multi-channel to omni-channel, which is actually very well covered. And e-commerce and e-grocery tie-ups, Spencer's plus Flipkart, and direct venturing. There are companies which are also direct venturing, which is like a DMart and Best Price. The question is it not there pre-COVID? Now it is increasing. The intent is increasing, right? And the 3rd element is a new player with a very well digital capability are trying to ride the wave. So I don't know how many of you seen this. There are food delivery startups with hyper-local ecosystem, right? Zomato Market and the Swiggy stores, and then the B2B player, they actually come with the tech capabilities. Also have a store connects. So that's how it's happening from the the go-to market, right? So the first point is, as I mentioned, evolving the go-to market. The second element is indirect cost. The people have to step back and think about how they can reset the cost. Is there any way we can reset the cost? The cost reset is possible in multiple categories. So people have to step back and see, hey, in terms of my maintenance, repair, and overall, in terms of office equipment, in terms of office furniture, in terms of telecom, multiple other categories, how they can step back, contain the cost, bring the margin better on the table, use the relevant technology, digital or right analytics. How do we kind of reset the cost, especially the cost to serve has to be optimized, right? So how we can do that. That is one of the important element which is happening in the indirect cost. So that is second portion. The third portion is digital. So digital is everywhere. Right? If you look at in terms of the wheel, the business wheel, starting from procurement, marketing, manufacturing, supply chain till the G&A automation, it's everywhere. People are now embarking lot of actually initiatives, lot of actually new initiatives happening, right? I'll probably give 1 or 2. Number 1, demand planning and forecasting. I'll probably take from a supply chain point of view, demand planning and forecasting. So I'll come back to this wheel if time permits. How the digital is happening in all the areas. I'll come back if time permits. But let me take one area, demand planning. Now people are moving away from a traditional forecasting methods. Switch off your traditional forecasting method, especially if you're doing a replenishment. Especially like if you do ROP and ROQ based replenishment, come out of it. Make a cross-functional team, which actually involves your data analyst, demand planner, salespeople to understand the volatility in the market. And your demand planning model or method has to be shift from your standard forecasting methods, the time series forecasting methods. It has to have demand driver, disease informations, and it also look at from the short-term demand predictive analytics. That is very important using machine learning. Then how do we collaborate and have a customer dialogue? How do we improve that through digital channel? That's where robotic process automation coming along, the RPA, which actually get the orders in an effective way from customer, and do a joint planning with your key supplier, key customers. That is the shift happening. The question, is it not there pre-COVID? Is it there? But the shift is happening very well. One example, let's say ITC, right? ITC kind of look at it in terms of this, the short-term demand forecasting using ML. Now they're shifting the entire demand forecasting to a short-term demand forecasting machine learning rather than time series, past history, historical based forecasting. That is happening very well from a demand planning point of view. Because what do you see the curve, right? The black curve, what you see is like a earlier trend. And pre-COVID, what we expected is this is how the trend will grow, right? The trend will grow, but post-COVID, the trend is different, right? So that's how, it's very tough to kind of do a training. So unprecedented situations. So even advanced machine learning is less effective because there is no training data. But in the last 3-4 months, people are capturing training data to the nth level and trying to figure out how we can actually bring a short-term demand forecasting as a new techniques. The interpolation methods, if you talk about technicality, there are interpolation methods. How we can use interpolation methods in machine learning, and how do we bring the best on the table? That's what people are evolving from the demand forecasting point of view. From the network design point of view, one or two examples with that I probably go to the last couple of slides. Network design point of view, right? In terms of depth, the layers of supplier. What you see here is what creates resilience, what invites vulnerability. So increase the ability to spot risk in suppliers. So rather actually supplier tier 3, tier 1, tier 2, tier 1. So supplier talking to supplier rather than try to have a supplier in a horizontal way. That I think create resilience. That actually would be good in terms of the setup. So this entire supplier networking will actually evolve drastically in future. That is for sure. And in terms of visibility, many supplier no transparency. So ultimately, how we can bring the extent to which customer can trace spending at a supplier level. So that I think evolving drastically. And in terms of network dependence, the likelihood the supplier is vulnerable to financial shocks. So how the supplier that are high dependent on one customer or SMEs, right? So that is the shift happening. So a lot of companies stepping back and figure out how they can restructure entire network is actually happening today, right? And why? Because the network is so complex, guys. Look at this Dell or Lenovo or PepsiCo, Nestle network in terms of the overall ecosystem, right? So their supplier ecosystem, their partner ecosystems, their customer ecosystems, the OEM ecosystems. It's a very, very tough, tough problem to solve. Look at it in terms of the Dell structure or the Nestle structure. It's very complicated ecosystems. So now, if some of the, in the entire chain, if some actually could not move to the next level, then it's very tough. The overall chain of the business will get affected. That's why people are stepping back and figure out how they can redesign and revisit their entire network setup is very important and vital. And people are also looking from the tech-enabled nerve center. How do we make a tech-enabled nerve center? These are some of the COVID integrated nerve center some of our clients actually doing. Workforce production. Can actually bring a workforce production as one of the important element. Supply chain stabilization, supplier engagement, inventory, focusing few product, more inventory, demand forecasting through a short-term demand forecasting using machine learning, and customer engagement. Can I do a B2B transparency? What orders will be required? Give the supplier full transparency so that he will be in a position to serve the right orders to us. These are some of the areas in which people are looking at a tech-enabled nerve center to coordinate their operations. And the digital and the analytics will evolve based on this. right? Will evolve based on this, and it may not be same for all the sectors. We need to understand which sector, which particular nerve center is vital. Based on that, we need to kind of think through how we can actually set up the right digital element, set up the right digital enablement for the company is very vital. So that's the element of overall technology is evolving today. Let me skip a couple of slides. I mean, maybe I think give you a very high sense of opportunities, right? So people are now trying to do zero-based existing project portfolio. So cost reduction lever. How we can think about this? Rationalize the overall portfolio, and how do we can think about the refreshing the entire portfolio. This one element I mentioned about the overall category, right? Second is how do I, this all from the IT point of view, right? How do we consolidate operations, consolidate the competing operations, all this. So these are some of the cost management opportunity people are thinking in terms of high level. Let me, I think, move directly to a slide where a company with the resilient supply chain can definitely reduce the EBIT with a range of 23% point, right? So if you have a good preparation on the table, the cost of what you see here is the cost of the shock, right? If the company is well prepared and they actually have a very good nerve center, very good demand management setup, everything is come on the table, then almost 23% points they actually kind of reduce the shock, right? So what you see here is clearly the prepared company in the first one, the unprepared company. So you see the post-shock EBITDA, right? So that I think can be contained very well. So what's going to evolve? The new supply chain archetype definitely is going to evolve. What are those archetypes? One is the efficient supply chain as an overall archetype, optimizing for the cost, and then resilient supply chain. Figure out what are the future risks, are we going to mitigate, then find out which area require more digital, which area have a relevant digital. So from resilient, it moved to a digital supply chain. And can I actually kind of expanding my channels, enter into a new channel, how we can expand my e-commerce setup. That's where the overall omni-channel supply chain will evolve. And finally, we also think about sustainability, right? Which is very vital as well. So embed the future of working in SCM with remote working, with rest travel, is almost sustainability. So this would be the new supply chain archetype will evolve post-crisis. The efficient supply chain, resilient supply chain, relevant digital analytics supply chain, and moving into e-commerce readiness, which is your omni-channel supply chain, and the last but not least, which is the green supply chain. So this is how the shift is going to happen in entire supply chain. So let me pause. Thanks to the entire participants for this particular call, and thank you to ISP for the great opportunity. My intent is to kind of share what is the overall new normal which is happening in supply chain. I want to do an entire, the breadth of coverage. What is the impact? What is the new normal in the business? How the shift is happening? How the companies are thinking about the shifts today? So that was the intent of this particular discussion. Hope that serves the purpose. Let me pause, and probably I'll spend some time to ask to answer a few other questions. Thanks to everyone, and thanks a lot. Hope this was useful and gave some kind of insights what is happening in the world and India in the COVID situation, and how companies and the supply chain are going to evolve post COVID. This would have given some kind of a picture for you. Thanks everyone.